Welcome to the Vine Resources podcast show. Welcome to another edition of the Vine Resources podcast show. I'm your host, David Lawrence, and I'm absolutely delighted today to have on the line with us Jeff Dodds. Jeff is the Managing Director of Virgin Mobile. Jeff, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Hi, David. It's a pleasure.
Jeff, I'm sure lots of people know who Virgin Mobile are, but perhaps for those who don't, can you tell us a little bit about the company and your role in the organisation, please?
Yeah, sure. So Virgin Mobile, actually founded back in about 1999, so it's been around for a while, was actually the world's first MVNO, so world's first virtual mobile network operator. And it is part now of Virgin Media. So it became part of Virgin Media back in about 2006. And Virgin Media, as many of your listeners will know, the UK's largest cable company, offering fibre broadband, TV services, fixed line telephone and mobile. So we're part of that organisation, and we are owned by Liberty Global, which is obviously the very large media telco organisation. Connecting around 22 million customers, I think, across 12 countries in the world.
Fantastic. And I'm going to just jump in and ask you, Jeff, what does a typical day in the business look like for you as the leader?
You know what, David, I don't think, I'm sure everybody says this when you ask, but I don't think there is a typical day in the business. So I think telco and media industry moves incredibly fast, very fast-paced business. And I think for me, I wear kind of two hats here. So I have a role on the executive here at Virgin Media. So that means I'm thinking about the business in what I would call a horizontal sense. So talking about, how we allocate resources, talent management, engagement across the organisation. And then I can very quickly whip that hat off and put my other hat on, which is to run Virgin Mobile. And then I'm talking much more specifically about mobile strategy, the converging industry, talking about shorter term commercial objectives. So there really is no typical day, but I tend to base myself out of London, and then once a week or once every other week I'll get out and try and visit one of our other sites and work from there.
Can you, Jeff, name a person that's perhaps had a tremendous impact on you as a leader? Perhaps it's even someone who's been a mentor to you. And how has that particularly impacted your life?
Yeah, good question. So I think in terms of my style as a leader, so it's interesting, isn't it? I was reflecting recently. We're all a product of our parents, and I have a father who's very calm and very clear and very precise. Very he's good fun, and I think I get some of my traits from him. And then my mum is quite different, actually. Very optimistic, very challenging, loves a good problem to solve. So I think my personal style is a bit of a fusion of both of them. But I think when you work in a senior role in a Virgin organisation, I'm very lucky actually here. I've had and I have some quite inspirational bosses here. But obviously Branson, he sits above this organisation. His name's above the door, so to speak. And I think if you spend any time with Richard, what you come to appreciate is that this kind of never-ending, challenging spirit and the entrepreneurialism and the desire to have a purpose beyond profit, and I think is incredibly inspirational if you're a leader in one of his organisations or one of the Virgin businesses. And I'm just lucky, Liberty is a large organisation, so I get to look around, I get to work with some very talented people above and below in terms of organisational structure, and I find inspiration in working with them almost every day. But of course, I've also worked in the past for some bosses that perhaps have influenced my style differently, in terms of I've worked with people who perhaps display a style that I don't want to replicate in the way that I lead with my team. So I think I've had both positive and negative experiences from people I've worked with that have helped shape my style.
Employee engagement is critical to the success of businesses, and I'm sure it's interesting to look at that and the challenges within a large organisation such as yours. What do you do from the top to keep your employees engaged?
We do a lot. Well, I think the first thing I would say, as an executive of this business, we talk about employee engagement a lot. And of course, we recognise that engagement it's not something you do to your employees, it's something you create with your employees. So engagement requires both parties to be engaged. So we spend a lot of time talking about how to engage our employees, but also maybe what the Virgin difference in engagement is, because I think a lot of people join a Virgin business with expectations around how engagement will work in a Virgin business. So we spend a lot of time trying to understand what our employees' expectations are and how we can better deliver that. We had a meeting recently actually with the executive, and I was talking with them. We have a small group of us on the executive that take a very active role in terms of engagement. And I'd read an article, and I'll probably get this wrong, so my apologies if I do, but I think it was Johan Hari who had written it, and it was an article that was talking about uncovering the real causes of depression, actually, and it was a fascinating article. But he was talking in that article about the kind of the basic physiological needs of humans in order to feel motivated and engaged and to avoid depression. And in that he talked about this need to feel like you belong to something, to feel valued, to feel that you're good at something, you provide value to the organisation, or you're good at something specific, to feel secure about your future, and also that you're part of something more meaningful than just a day-to-day activity. And I think whilst it wasn't written in the context of employee engagement, we were talking as an exec recently about how actually, if you think about that in the context of work, helping your employees feel that they belong in the organisation, that they're valued in the organisation, that they're performing a role that they're good at, that they're turning up every day to do something they're specifically good at, to feel secure about their role in the organisation and the future of the organisation, but also that they're not just turning up to do their job, they're turning up to work in an organisation that's trying to do something bigger than just make a profit. And so in our organisation, one of the areas that we're very focused on at the moment is disability. So we have a partnership with Scope, the disability charity, and we have I call it a campaign, which is probably a bit too superficial, but we have this program called Work With Me, which is about trying to help 1 million disabled people who want to work that can't currently find work get into employment. And I think that's the kind of thing our employees really connect with, which is this a meaning beyond simply turning up to do their day job.
What's the biggest challenge that you believe, Jeff, that's facing business leaders today?
I think there's a couple that I'm acutely aware of at the moment. I think the first of them is how you continue to diversify and differentiate in what is an increasingly homogenised market. So how can you continue to stand out as a business? And for us, part of that's ensuring that the Virgin brand, the Virgin Media brand, and of course, if I was talking about Liberty more broadly, the Liberty brands in the countries that it operates in, how do we stand out as a brand? What makes us different? And how do we ensure that our products and our services also stand out in an increasingly complex marketplace? And I think the other area that I find myself talking quite a lot about with the team at the moment is how do we keep pace with this increasing digitisation that's taking place around us? So, our own behaviours are changing very rapidly as we embrace more and more digital technology, and organisations are complex. We have systems and IT systems and infrastructure that takes a long time to build, and once you've built it, you want to make the most of that investment. So how do you continue to keep pace with changing digital behaviours and ensure that your infrastructure and your service proposition can keep pace with it? And I think for me, they're the two things that I think are most challenging: retaining that point of difference and ensuring that we can keep pace with changing consumer behaviour.
Thanks for that, Jeff. How do you help a new employee, though, understand the culture of your company?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I think culture is something again that perhaps Virgin has a rich history and lots written about the Virgin culture. So I think at its simplest, David, I would say role modelling it. So that's the first thing, and culture is quite a nebulous term, isn't it? So it's quite difficult, I think, to cultures how things are done around here, and therefore it's quite difficult, I think, to explain that. I think people turn up and they feel it. They feel and they observe what the culture is. I think one of the most important things we can do as leaders in the organisation, though, is to recognise those people that are displaying the behaviours we value in the business, and to publicly recognise and reward that. So, and I don't necessarily mean paying people. I mean, if people are absolutely on brand, demonstrating behaviours that we care about, then ensuring that we take a moment to call out those behaviours and those people, and ensuring that they're people in the organisation that get the opportunities in the organisation. Because I think all too often, some people are recognised or called out for perhaps individual contributions or performances when they don't necessarily display the behaviours that we do value.
What's the one mistake you witness leaders making more frequently than others?
Well, I can say with some confidence that I don't just witness others making it; I witness myself making it very regularly as well. So, and I think that's largely under communicating. So, I think when you work in a large organisation with lots of complex, competing, often priorities, with a large number of staff, I think it's sometimes easy to put out a message or to communicate something once and quickly, and to assume that message has landed. And of course, the reality is you just can't over communicate. So continually explaining what you want to do or what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you'd like it executed, who's got the accountability for it, and continually reinforcing those messages, I think, is incredibly important. And I think, I can't speak for everybody. I know it's something I observe a lot, and I know it's something that I probably underestimate at my peril. You just cannot communicate those things too much.
And in your opinion, what's perhaps the one trait that you have seen derail more leaders' careers than others?
Perhaps inconsistency. So I think, again, if you're making decisions, and often in large organisations they're big decisions, and when you make a decision, large groups of people and large amount of resources get pushed towards those plans, to then change scope or change direction, or to even sometimes very small changes can derail a large number of people. It can mean that execution is poor. It can mean that time frames get pushed out. So I think being clear on decision making and then consistent about it, I think, is absolutely critical.
Jeff, I'm going to ask you to get your crystal ball out a little bit now, and ask you to see how you believe the industry is going to change in the future, and secondly, how will that affect your ability to attract and hire the best talent or the right talent?
Yes, a bit of stargazing. I think actually, I feel very privileged, because I think when you work in a media or a telco business, we already attract a lot of great talent today. So I think a lot of talent are attracted to what appears to be a highly technological, innovative, fast-moving industry, and for Virgin particularly, and for Liberty particularly, players that are helping to shape the industry. So I think we're very lucky. We do attract some top talent. I certainly remember when I was growing up, the proving ground for top talent used to be the companies like Unilever and P&G, and certainly I'm a marketeer. That's the route I came through. So certainly in the marketing space, people fell over each other to find opportunities in those kind of brand management environments. And I do think today that the media and telco industry is right up there with them. I think if you can operate successfully in this environment, you really do set yourselves up for a successful career in any environment. And I think the other things I think are becoming much more important as we look to the future. Certainly technology is developing incredibly quickly. So I work in a telco organisation. So the emergence of 5G and fixed wireless access, all these very exciting technologies that we know will transform consumer behaviour. So it's certainly an exciting place to be.
Jeff, if you had your time again and were giving your 20-year-old self advice in today's market, fast changing market, what's the one thing you'd say to yourself?
Well, I think the first thing that's clear is if I was trying to give my 20-year-old self advice, I wouldn't be listening to me. That's the first thing. So I'm not sure it would be a particularly useful exercise. A couple of things. Right. So what advice would I give myself? Maybe one of them, on a personal level, one of them might be to have kids earlier. So I've got two relatively young boys that we had slightly later in life, and I think having had children, certainly it forces you to view the world slightly differently and to prioritise slightly differently. So I think so maybe I would have done that sooner. And I think the other thing is, and I would recommend this to myself at every age group, not just myself at 20, but maybe to invest more time as much time in my intellectual fitness as I do physical fitness. So whilst I think it's very easy to make sure you get to the gym or you go out for a quick run or you try and keep yourself physically fit and healthy, whilst we're all working very hard, I think spending the time to invest in your intellectual fitness, but maybe through mindfulness or yoga or meditation, or just making sure you carve out the time for thinking as well as doing, I think is absolutely critical. And certainly for me, I've probably upped my game in that area over the last 6 or 7 years, and I've probably benefited significantly more from that than I have any time I've spent on a treadmill or on a rowing machine.
Jeff, thank you so much for sharing that. And I know what it feels like with children, and I'm not even with them most of the day, and I'm exhausted when I get home. So I know what that's like. Jeff, thanks so much for sharing that. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you, find out more about Virgin?
Well, they can find out lots more about Virgin by popping onto the Virgin website anytime they want, or certainly the Virgin website or the Virgin Media website. If they want to get in contact with me, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so I'm Jeff Dodds, Dodds. Anyone can go and find me on LinkedIn and drop me a message or connect with me. So that's probably the easiest way.
Jeff, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the call.